Hi, I'm Femi Oke and you're in the stream. This is Hawaii's Mauna Kea. It is home to Hawaiian culture, to astronomers, and now mass protests. Oh, it's good to be back, and just in time for Stream Science Week, Malika Bilal. Thank you so much.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. Now, 2 weeks ago, we did an open editorial. You suggested ideas for a science stream program. We strung them all together for 1 week, and here we are.
Right.
Day one.
Exactly.
Hawaii.
Very exciting. Of course, we got the pitch for today's show via Twitter. Lots of tweets came in on it, and we also got it in our open editorial that Femi just mentioned. And the topic of today's show was inspired by the building of a huge telescope on this mountain in Hawaii. But in our open editorial, Renee, a cosmologist from South Africa, says it's more than just that.
It's really been sparking a debate about how do we understand the fact that there's the colonialization, in a sense, is embedded in some of our history. And as astronomers, we want to do good science that is good for humanity. And how do we address, looking inward as a community, the fact that our science may be impacting negatively on other communities?
So we're going to delve into all of those topics in today's show. We want your help. Tweet us, #AJStream.
Waone o Kalekoa o Maui no Ka'oe. I'm in the stream.
Sacred places, we each have our own. To many native Hawaiians, it's Mauna Kea, the White Mountain. The inactive volcano is where native Hawaiians' oral history began. It's where their ancestors buried their dead and looked to the stars for knowledge. Now, astronomers are looking up from Mauna Kea. With 13 telescopes, they're enjoying one of the best views of the universe and planning a new giant telescope. The 30-meter telescope, or TMT, will tower 18 stories high. Its mirror, the size of a basketball court, will look farther into the universe and see the potential for life beyond Earth. But that's if the TMT is built. Mass protests by native Hawaiians have blocked construction, and they say they're not opposed to science, but to erasing indigenous culture. So with us to talk about this in Oahu, Paul Coleman is an astrophysicist with the University of Hawaii. In Waimea, Hawaii, I Kalani Flores is a native Hawaiian and Mauna Kea activist. In Seattle, Keolu Fox is a Hawaiian scientist and a PhD candidate at the University of Washington. And in Seoul, Alex Lockwood is an astrophysicist. So, hello, everybody. It's good to have you here. Let me start with this idea of the exciting prospect of having a giant telescope on the top of Mauna Kea. What gets astronomers so worked up about this? It's a little video that I borrowed from Alex Lockwood, who's amongst our lineup. This is Alex talking about why she loves what she does, and she's right up here on Mauna Kea.
Because nothing beats being up here, being so much closer to the heavens, to the stars, to the sources that I'm interested in, to just the unimaginable, and unimaginable scales and incredible sources. And I am fortunate enough to get to work up here. Yeah, this is my why.
See, Alex, I can see you surrounded by domes there, different telescopes out there on Mauna Kea. But this TMT is a beast. It's huge. What is it going to do for the science community?
Oh, it's got incredible implications for science. It is much bigger, and what that means for science is so much more information. It's the same as when you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't see anything in the dark, and then you give your eyes a few minutes to adjust. You get more light in your eyes and you see more detail. It's the same thing with a telescope. This guy is going to be almost 10 times as big as the ones that are currently on top of Mauna Kea, which provide us incredible views, but with 10 times as much information coming in, 10 times as much detail, we're going to see new planets, and we're going to see new parts of galaxies. There's huge developments that could be made using this telescope.
And we saw from your video that there were a number of telescopes already on Mauna Kea. There are actually 13 there already. Why is 13 not enough?
Again, it's about the size. When you have all of these giant mirrors that collect light working together, you get so much more information. The ones that are there now are great and have done great science, but we need to make bigger telescopes to really push the limits of what we can explore in space.
And Paul, you heard Alex say that this is about incredible views. There's also another view here on Twitter. This is North Swan, and she says this telescope will greatly enhance a better understanding of the universe. Another giant leap into the past and the future of the universe's existence. And Paul, of course, that all sounds really good, but can you break that down for the layperson? What is it that we're talking about here? Taking us back to the Big Bang, explaining how that happened? Describe what it is that we could find out.
Well, this telescope, if everything works out correctly in terms of sensitivities, it will allow us to look right up to the edge of the universe that we could ever possibly see. The universe starts with a Big Bang, and for a little while, it's impossible to see anything in the universe because it's like a smoke-filled room. Photons are traveling from one particle to the next, getting absorbed and then re-emitted, so you really can't see across the room. But as the universe continues to expand, then pretty soon the smoke dissipates and you're able to see across the universe. And so there's a certain time in the universe, or distance from the Big Bang, or time since the Big Bang, beyond that we cannot see. And the TMT will allow us to look right up to that limit. So it literally will get us to be able to see as much of the universe as is possible.
Kaelu, you're a scientist. You can hear sort of the passion, the excitement about this TMT, this giant telescope that's heading up to Mauna Kea. As a scientist yourself, do you sort of feel you understand why scientists are so exciting about bigger, better, more information? Does that resonate at all with you?
Sure, it resonates because this is going to be a paradigm shift in the type of disruptive technology that's going to yield higher resolution data. But the people that benefit from this, it's a handful of people that are likely going to make careers and receive tenure-track positions by publishing in Nature and Science. And it's at the expense of indigenous knowledge, indigenous rights, our culture, and our land. So it's a very sensitive subject. But as a scientist, I understand that publications are the currency, and it's definitely a hard juxtaposition. It's not an easy choice, certainly as an indigenous scientist like Dr. Coleman and I.
Alex?
I disagree. I disagree that there's only a handful of people who are using this. Astronomy inspires people. It really does. And I've spoken to many people on the Big Island who love the fact that there's an astronomical community, who love the lectures that are given at these observatories, who benefit from not both the tourism, but more importantly what is gained in scientific understanding. And hundreds, I would dare say thousands, millions of people are inspired by astronomy, and what that means for the creativity that is inspired and the innovation for our society. There's a much larger impact for humanity than for the handful of scientists who are going to do science there.
Alex, with all due respect, you have a lot to gain personally from this as an astrophysicist, but there are many other types of science. For example, I am involved in human genome sequencing, which is a form of biology. There's a lot of momentum moving in that direction. That's inspirational as well. This isn't about, personally inspiring people. This is about preserving a culture that is sort of, honestly, we're struggling to keep our culture alive, and this is one of our, this is our generation, our opportunity, and we're having a renaissance in our culture and our language and so on. So by putting up this telescope, there's a lot at risk, right?
Keilu and Alex, let me just bring in some of the community thoughts as we're having this discussion. Malika?
Well, they hear that disagreement right there, and then they answer with this. This is Narissa on Facebook, and she says, why is there such an outcry against the TMT? Well, there were 13, as Femi mentioned earlier. That's the number of telescopes currently on the mountain. 13 chances to do the right thing with little regard for the environment or the community that holds Mauna Kea sacred. And on the back of that, Ashtant says that is the issue. These scientists say they only want to explore the stars when in reality there's a bigger telescope being built in Chile. So Kalani, do you see the issue here? And why do you believe that Mauna Kea is the spot that astronomers have chosen?
I say aloha no tātou pauroa from Keawe, island of Hawaii. We'd like to say greetings to all of you out there. So when you get to the island, the last comment about the 13, the 13 telescopes were built there with a big disregard for Native Hawaiian culture practices and for our sacred mountain. And it's basically been rubber stamped in this whole process. When I say rubber stamped, everything's really politically motivated and business charged. And so all the permits that were allowed for some of those observatories to be built don't meet the criteria to be built in a conservation district, and some of those telescopes were built without a permit and were given the permit after the fact. And so after 13 telescopes later, with this one, it's not just this one. People have been protesting and trying to stop what was happening to our sacred mountain long ago, but the native voices, the native voices of the Hawaiians have been systematically ignored.
Kalani?
But Kalani, that's...
Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll go second. You're my guest.
Sorry, that's not really true. I mean, Native Hawaiians have been a part of this process from the very beginning. Now, perhaps the original taking care of the mountain was done poorly, but ever since, I think, 1999, with the state audit, which was forced, the community has tried its best to both be inclusive of the many voices. And mind you, there are many voices who have different opinions about what levels of kapu should be applied to this mountain. I don't believe in any case have voices or people been kept from being a part of this.
Paul, let me just
maybe just reply to that. The voices have been heard, but they've been ignored, and this goes back to it. It goes back to 1880s into 1980s into the 1970s when it was first being proposed. So Native Hawaiian voices have been ignored.
Can I ask you just to give me a pause for a moment, because I think there's something that you know that a lot of our international audience won't be up to date with, and that is about Mauna Kea. What does that actually mean for some members of Hawaiian community? Why is it so special? Why is there an argument about putting telescopes on this specific mountain? I think that's really key to this conversation. What's special about it?
Our mountain is also known as Mauna Kea, Mountain of Sky Father. That's the ancient name of the ancient ones who first came to these islands. And even before our people came to these islands, there are divine and ancient ones who still stand on that mountain, our ancestral guardians. It's a holy place, the place of reverence. It is the same as you would compare Mount Fuji in Japan or Mount Sinai in other places.
So could you put anything on it then, Kalani, or would there be no buildings whatsoever? I'm just trying to get the level of how sacred it is or how sacred it should be treated.
It's so sacred that even our early Hawaiian peoples, our ancient chiefs and our priests, they never did put a huge temple or anything on top of the summit, because they understood the summit was sacred.
Alex, how do you respond to that then?
And Western man has put their things on our summit.
Alex, you've done amazing discoveries up there that you've found using the telescopes on Mauna Kea. How do you feel when you say, Kalani, it's so sacred, you shouldn't have anything up there?
For me, if we sort of understand our mutual goals of appreciating each other's culture and appreciating what we can do together, for me, the heavens are very sacred to me, not only as a scientist, but just as someone who really respects the great beyond. And I absolutely understand that there are certain places that should be revered, and Mauna Kea is one of them. It's beautiful. And because of that, and because of where it's located, and probably one of the things that inspired it to be so holy was the great heights that it reaches, and that's the reason that we love it as an astronomical community. And perhaps there's a way to make the conversation more about how do we more mutually respect each other in the building process and in the outcomes, so that we can both benefit from what can be gained by reaching more of the heavens.
Hey, Yolu, I see you itching to get in, but I want to read you a taste of what people online are saying about this, because I think you could probably relate. This is Dandelion. We asked her, what does the mountain mean to you? And she said, it's like visiting my grandparents in heaven and feeling so much love that one just has to cry. And so then she went on to say that the problem she has with the telescope is that this is total colonization. Hawaii already knows how to read the sky. For our audience that may have no idea what she means about colonization, what does that mean to you, and how do those two things relate?
So for our international audience, I kind of want to take a historical turn, a contextual turn, and just imagine, okay, first of all, we have two UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Hawaii. One is Haleakala, and the other is Volcano National Park. Now, for whatever reason, Mauna Kea is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But imagine the holiest place you can imagine. Al-Aqsa, the Wailing Wall, Mecca, these types of places that have spiritual reverence in these communities. And imagine building the largest building you can imagine on top of King David's Temple Mount, for example, right? That's the type of spiritual connection and attachment that our community has to these. Now, in terms of a history of colonization, we really need to look at the facts. And Dr. Coleman and Kalani both alluded to this earlier, but it's that the land was illegally seized. Our queen was imprisoned in her own palace. You know, this was in an effort to get cash crops such as sugarcane and pineapple, which are synonymous with colonization. And, you know, it's also a strategic military position. Do the math. Like, this is a history of colonization. This is how oppressed people act when you know, look at Louis XVI. He got beheaded because he wasn't treating the community in France right. We're protesting peacefully. We know our history. We're not Luddites. We have a rich history of science, you know? It's strange, and it's unfortunate.
Let me just play you a clip. This is Pua Case. She's Kalani's wife. So this was beginning of April, on a protest on Mauna Kea. And this is what she had to say. Have a listen to this.
Everyone here knows that 18 stories doesn't belong on this mountain. Everybody knows 18 stories should not be on a water aquifer. I don't care what anyone says about astronomy. We are talking about our watershed, you guys back there. We are talking about our water. If you don't...
So, Kalani, Alex just mentioned maybe there can be a coming together of minds, the scientific community and the indigenous Hawaiian community. Is that something that you would even contemplate? And what happens with the 13-meter telescope in that coming together of minds?
It's interesting. Alex mentioned that our cultures maybe can work together. But what has happened is our culture has been dominated by cultures from outside of Hawaii. And other cultures and other foreign countries and other foreign entities and other foreign corporations have come here with a disregard for our sacred space. And we as a people still have a reverence and aloha for our land and our sacred places. And we must, and that's why we're not protesting, we're protecting. We're standing up and protecting what is dear and sacred to us. And despite what everybody else wants to be imposed upon us, we say enough is enough. 13 has already been caused massive destruction and desecration to our sacred mountain, and enough is enough. And if you want to start taking them down, that would be better yet.
Paul?
I'd like to interject that while you feel very strongly about this, I have no histories in my Hawaiian lineages where people have said that Mauna Kea is in any way more sacred than any other part of land on the islands. So I think this leads us to the point that every single Hawaiian has to make up their own mind whether or not the kapu is as strong as you are suggesting it is, and whether that means that we cannot build anything on this mountain. We need to take the road down. We need to take all of the structures, all the inter stuff that's up there. We need to just get rid of it all. But I think this is therefore going to be, this is going to be a decision of every single Hawaiian, not just the people like us who can reach the media, but apparently if it's going to be this, we have to go with the democratic process because we don't really have ali'i anymore. And so every single Hawaiian has to decide whether or not they can enforce this kapu or whether or not they can work around it. Okay, and you know that us Hawaiians, we've always worked our way around kapu. If there's something that keeps us from actually forwarding the Hawaiian goals, we will set aside the kapu for a little while or permanently. Okay, so this is something that we all have to just decide.
Yeah. And I think it's correct. We have to work together in that way. But the majority of Hawaiians, if you see throughout the islands of Hawaii, have been holding signs, rallying, and there's very few people who have been standing up for this telescope in Hawaii.
I'm willing to submit it to a vote. I'm willing to have a vote. Let's have a vote. And in fact, this is directly.
But let me say, gentlemen, let me just show you. Let me just show you a headline here, because I know the community want to jump in just really quickly before we end this main part of the show. Headline here: Supreme Court in Hawaii grants application to hear telescope case. So it's going to be in the Supreme Court. It is in the Supreme Court right now, not going to a vote. Let's just check out to see what Malika has. Malika,
well, picking up on that and where we go from here. Online, there was this was tweeted at us. This was a protest that happened 7 a.m. Hawaii time this morning. Many people stand for today, stop the desecration of our mountains. So people are continuing to protest. But as an alternative, Keolu, there was this tweet from Emma who says, what could happen is an offering of community STEM programs involving the telescope program, perhaps make it a part of the community, give something in return. And I know there is money for that. So do you think that that's enough, Keolu?
Yeah, I think it's quite the consolation prize in reality. There are many types of knowledge, right? There's westernized knowledge. There's the type of knowledge that I'm receiving right now in this graduate school, and that's completely westernized. And then there's indigenous knowledge. And indigenous knowledge is completely different. You can't set up a scholarship fund for higher education so that people can absorb that knowledge. However, there are groups in Hawaii like the Hokulea Worldwide Voyage and so on that are approaching, the dissemination of that. And I think that's important. Do young Hawaiians need to see people like Dr. Coleman and myself and all types of leaders letting our indigenous knowledge and our indigeneity inform the types of scientific questions we answer with westernized tools? Yeah, I would say that is the case. But there's a fine balance, I only speak for myself, but I really think that there has been just a lack of transparency on the policy end. And, we could have not been as impulsive and considered other options.
In the last 2 minutes of the show, what do you want to happen to the 30-meter telescope?
Me personally?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think that the powers that be, the consortia, a lot of the people that are making decisions should probably talk to some angel VC like Elon Musk, for example, or Larry Ellison, who probably needs some good PR in Hawaii right now, and have him match that $1.54 billion and put that telescope in the sky. And I know there are some problems with adaptive optics, and it might be a little more difficult, but the reality is that putting a telescope on land isn't going to produce data.
You don't want it on Mauna Kea, basically. Alex, TMT, what do you want to happen to it?
I think it needs to be built there. A lot of the conservation of the culture and the knowledge and the history and helping the indigenous people make sure that those things are passed on and figuring out other ways to preserve the land on behalf of the indigenous people is something important and should be part of the conversation. But it's very not easy to put a space telescope, operation, maintenance, all of that stuff. So it's not just as easy as put it in space
Lockwood,
and we can do it.
Keolu Fox, Kalani Flores and Paul Coleman, they're all coming to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Stream Science Week continues in a moment. And thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we're looking at the impact of fishing and overfishing. Where does the fish on your plate comes from? Stream Science continues in the post show. See you soon. Hello again, this is the Streams online post show. We're talking about science, spirituality and the space in between. Let's get right back to this. I want to show you something that went viral in the science world. So we have here an email that circulated, and I'm going to scroll down here to show you the email. And it says, it's from Sandy Faber. Dear friends, the 30-meter telescope is in trouble, attacked by a horde of native Hawaiians who are lying about the impact of the project on the mountain. Paul, do you think this could be part of the problem, that scientists are not maybe being empathetic with what really Mauna Kea is really about? But you are also native Hawaiian as well. This was probably, at the very least, a poorly worded email. Maybe?
Yes, at the very least, a poorly worded email.
Can you give us a bit of the backstory without losing us who've just seen this email? What happened, and why would somebody write native Hawaiians, a horde of native Hawaiians? Why would they write that?
It's obvious that they've been influenced by the flash mob aspect of the resistance, which is just sort of splashed forward in the last few months. But they are not thinking that, of course, there's been resistance throughout the process. There's been discussions, there's been long talks, 8 years, 7 years of gathering information, listening to the sides. So it's clear that in any debate or any kind of argument, there's always going to be the people who are most easily led by what they see in the frontline media, and so they just react. And unfortunately, scientists, we don't have a automatic cultural sensitivity knob that we turn on and say, oh wait, this is not the right thing to say.
Right.
In fact, we're kind of well known for sticking our foot in our mouth.
Right. And do you think that's the metaphor for this entire debate, Kealu, that maybe scientists might not be the best at understanding that there's the science out there and everybody's like, whoa, the science, as they're walking over maybe people's indigenous histories? Is that a possibility?
From a technical point of view, I would say that you should leave science to scientists. Let us distill the knowledge to the non-technical public. That's something that we do struggle with. But as far as the horde comment, like, we're all Hawaiian on this show, excluding Alex here. Do we look like a horde? That's just it's upsetting. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that.
I feel kind of hordy sometimes.
Alex?
Well, I don't know who sent that email, and I hope that it was one of those things that's taken out of context, as things on the internet easily are and shared.
All right. Sometimes, though, when somebody says a horde of native Hawaiians, there's only so much context you need in terms of how you refer to some people, right, Alex? Because that out of context is the excuse for everything bad that anybody's emails ever, anybody ever written in an email. But what did you want to add?
People who haven't been to Hawaii don't appreciate what the inherent beauty of the place is, and what the passion of the people for their culture.
Yeah.
And so that scientists or non-scientists, I don't know if you appreciate that if you haven't been there, or really spent time there. And even then, I wouldn't say that I completely understand the nuances, but I think there's.
But what about this main point, though, about not really appreciating, scientists not really appreciating the indigenous communities that they sometimes have to interact with, or maybe they're just not interacting with them?
I mean, as Paul said, we've had years of speaking, having these conversations and doing the background research before trying to build this telescope. And I hope that they only continue, and that the fact that Mauna Kea is sacred for all of these people, scientifically and culturally and historically, maybe that encourages the conversation and opens these doors for more communication between scientists and people, and about the culture and the sensitivities.
Kalani, I see 13 telescopes right now up on Mauna Kea. Do you feel that there's any way that you could actually win this battle? History's not on your side.
It's been very, very difficult, but we believe that there's a shift in consciousness around the world with people standing up and for their lands. We see that I don't know more, and we send out our aloha to our relations all in throughout the continents there, and people throughout the world are standing up for justice and for what's not correct and what's not appropriate. And what the comment that was mentioned, the reason people actually got arrested, there were 31 that got arrested in blockading the road, and the reason why they blockaded the road is they're trying to start construction, and as you pointed out, the legal challenges are still in court. The final court is our state Supreme Court, and it still hasn't made a final decision, yet the TMT International Observatory pushed ahead with construction, even though there's a legal challenge in court on the validity of the permit that was issued. And so we're saying, why are you moving ahead in court when it's still why are you moving ahead with construction while it's still in court?
Yeah.
But to our people, I think that throughout the world are standing up, and we ask them to stand with us, and we are Mauna Kea. And that statement alone says that we are all part of this earth, and we thank everyone who has been supportive of that. Mahalo.
See, Kealu, I get the feeling as I looked at this situation here with the TMT that the protesters or the protectors, it's not about this particular telescope. It's about years and years and years of losing the battle as an indigenous community against other people coming in and using Hawaii. Did I misread that, or is that what you're feeling here? That it's a bigger movement than just a big telescope.
Correct. I completely agree with you. The TMT is a symbol of a historic or systematic oppression. The sad thing is we're not the only indigenous community that is dealing with this situation. And, we mobilized using social media, just like you've seen with the Arab Spring and Black Lives Matter, and most recently Baltimore. And this is a true pulse on what indigenous people want and don't want. And actually, I saw a Wall Street Journal article showing that more minority populations use Instagram, and a lot of people were alerted via Instagram. So, I mean, this is a true kickback and a pulse on how our community feels about the development and construction of a telescope, which represents a larger systematic oppression of indigenous people. So
then do you think we can change the conversation to be about what it's about instead of about this telescope? Because the opportunities from the telescope are so incredible, but there is, I agree, this just kind of systematic oppression of people who aren't given the voice because of inherent money, power, whatever issues. So how do we change the conversation to be about something bigger and really bring the important issues on the table about respecting people and respecting their needs?
I agree with you, and that is exactly what we're doing right now on the stream. We are talking about this issue. We are having a conversation, and that's the most important part. And people are going to watch all over the world, 280 million viewers, you guys said. So let's do this. This is our story. Do what you can, read the literature, support the community. If you think this is wrong, like we do,
let me go to one of those 280 million viewers and see what they have to say. The hordes of our viewers.
Right. Well, they actually have an answer to the question that that Alex raised. This is Sarah. She sent us this video comment. She has one suggestion for how to better change this conversation. So have a listen to this.
A way for scientists to respect Indigenous culture is to make sure that our scientific spaces are safe for Indigenous folks who pursue Western science. So our educational spaces and our professional spaces tend to be designed for white folks to feel very comfortable, and there are a lot of steps that we could take to make those spaces feel safe and comfortable for Indigenous scientists and scientists of color.
And I saw Paul nodding his head. I'm sure all of our guests can agree with that one.
So thank you so much to Paul, Kalani, Kealu and Alex as well for being part of this conversation. If you want to see what happens next, a couple of hashtags you should follow. Malika, what's the one that you'd recommend?
The best one is Stream Science.
Okay, Stream Science. And we will keep you up to date on this story. Thank you very much, guests, for being part of the very first Stream Science programme of this week. On our next show, have you thought about where the fish on your plate comes from? We'll discuss overfishing and the far-reaching impacts it's having. Until then, we'll see you online.